Hello, everyone, and welcome to SEGA Saturn SHIRO, the only podcast that raids tombs. I'm Patrick, and today we have our other hosts, Nick, Dave, Peter, and Ben. How's it going today, guys?
Going good.
Gang's all here.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute since we recorded a podcast for sure. Definitely has been. We've been really busy. Well, I guess I don't know. Do you guys count the SHIRO Show as a podcast technically?
I
It's
don't.
Sort of. No.
I think people are confused about that because a lot of people are like, "Oh, your podcast is really good for like weekly news," and I'm like, "That's not the podcast. That's the show."
Yeah, it's mostly because we cross post on the podcast feed itself.
We probably need to do something
streams.
about that.
I think we can have multiple shows on Podbean, but I kind of like people having a conglomerate of everything on one area.
Mm-mm.
I guess I don't know, so that way people can easily keep track of it and they'll have to subscribe to two different feeds.
This is
I don't know,
true.
I'm kind of like that. We could definitely talk about that in the future. And and you fans, let us know what you guys think. Do you guys want us to split up the feeds? Do you guys want SHIRO Show news on an exclusive feed? Do you guys want podcasts on an exclusive feed? Let us know and we will do something. I was going to say we were going to please you, but that sounded kind of weird, so I wanted to rephrase that. This is the second weird rephrasing that I've done in like 2 days. But anyways, why don't we do a quick update? Would you like to go first, Dave?
Sure. Yeah. Quick update. Working a lot. Doing lots of SHIRO stuff. Here and there. Pat talked with Bob from Retro RGB. That was fun. Pat. It was a really fun conversation. Yeah, and he's a real cool guy, as I already knew. But I mean, getting to talk to him was nice. And then we did SHIRO Show, and that we pulled that off, even though it was like just getting everything set up just in the nick of time, because Friday was a big work day for me. But yeah, so just just keeping on. Nothing game related to report though, other than playing a little Tomb Raider and playing a lot of the 27th anniversary games to try to finish up judging on that. Yep.
And we're going to be having the competition, the stream for that on Friday. It's going to be like a
That's
5-hour stream, I believe, with me and Emerald.
Yes.
I think you, man, this feels bad because it's technically talking about it before we talk about it privately. But like, I was talking to Emerald about because I didn't bring it up to you that I was going to have you do the show by yourself on Friday, and then I do the 5-hour show afterwards with Emerald, and that way.
Why don't you just do a extravaganza with Emerald and have that be the show? I think that would be great.
I don't know. I kind of want you to be involved as well. It'd be kind of
I
feel bad missing out.
I wouldn't feel that bad. I'm so tired.
I think Dave's trying to get a day off.
Yeah, like I know Knight will give me a hard time. I'll be like, Dave's always bowing out. But I'm thinking next week I'm going to be really tired. But yeah,
but if you want to take a break, we could talk about that off screen. But like I said, we work something out. If you want to do a SHIRO Show during the day, and then I'll do the 5-hour thing during the night, or you want to hop on during the night stream. That's also a good option.
Yeah, I could definitely plug the stream and let people know that they need to tune in for it. So yeah,
gotcha. Well, we'll figure that out. All right. Anything else, Dave?
That's it. On to you, Nick.
On to you, Nick.
Nick has the floor.
How's the weather out there, Nick?
Well, warmer. And by warmer, I mean I think it's -2 degrees air temp. That's Fahrenheit.
Ooh. I can feel that. I mean, like it's about 71 degrees here in Arizona, so I definitely can lament being cold.
Yeah, you must be chilly down there, asshole.
Very chilly. I have to wear a light jacket when I go outside now.
The coldest it got here the past couple of weeks was in the negative, like the very low -20s. I think it was -27 air temp, and that's without wind chill. With wind chill, it felt like -40 and at times -50 at night. And Peter told me that I actually beat him. He lives in Canada, the land of the maple moose and the very cold weather, and good old USA beat them, or at least my part of USA
coming on top again.
That's right. So yeah, it was so cold that they canceled school because they couldn't start the school buses because the temperature was that low.
Wow.
It was
I
bad.
thought it was because of the rampant COVID outbreak, but I guess school buses also.
But no, it was just school buses. But as for me, how I'm doing, other than freezing, I'm fine. We since the last podcast, we moved to a new, bigger apartment. I have a bigger space for playing games and stuff, and
he's no longer in the closet.
No longer in the closet. That's right. And my wife got me a bitchin' desk for my computer setup, and it's been great. Beat Metroid Dread, really loved it. That was probably the second best game I played all year, behind Half-Life Alyx.
And I should not have played Half-Life Alyx, should I? I even got a VR set for Christmas, so maybe I need to play VR Half-Life VR Alyx. Half-Life Alyx.
Would highly recommend. That is fantastic, especially if you've. I would make sure that you've played the rest of the Half-Life games, at the very least Half-Life 2 and its episodes, because it's very relevant to Alyx.
I played that like about almost 15 years ago, so I think I'm good.
All right, right.
I think I'm caught up from 15 years ago. Maybe you might need to do a refresh play, but
maybe do like a refresh play, or at least like watch a recap on YouTube or something, just to get that fresh in your mind. It is important for Half-Life Alyx.
Yeah, but man, I can't believe it's been like 15 years since the
sequel. We finally got it. We finally sort of got Half-Life 3 in a sense.
I remember when everyone was always hyped about episode 2 and like, oh, when's that coming out? And now it's like, man, what amateurs.
Right. For Saturn stuff, I by the time this episode will be released, I will have finished and uploaded my video about the Sega Extreme contest entries. A probably more than 1 hour long video reviewing every single entry briefly. That's all the patches, utilities, and of course the original games. Very tough to judge that one this year. There were a lot of good entries, a lot of good original games. I'd say Cube Cat, Hellslave, Blue Skies, easy contenders for the number 1 spot. Some of the other ones could even, cutting it pretty close too.
I don't know. I think Cloth is probably the best one in my
opinion.
Is the Cloth demo? Yeah, no.
Guys, I'm more partial to 15 Extreme with the pony puzzles. That one's my favorite.
Yeah, that one totally not getting us. Oh man, that reminds me. When I do that stream, you'll have to help me out to make me sure I pick the puzzle that doesn't get our YouTube channel shut down.
It is hard to. It's hard to judge though, because you kind of have to wait certain ones if they haven't been entered before. Like a lot of the entries were entered last year, so you're kind of judging off what they've managed to do beyond last year. Yeah,
exactly. Because like Hellslave made some changes. I'd argue Cube Cat might have made more, and so it's weighing. Okay, well, which one did I enjoy more? Which one do I feel made the most progress? Does that make it better than the other? And it's like, and then there's Blue Skies coming in with like, this is brand new, and we got this whole 3D archipelago that we're flying around in a nice, beautiful sprite-based plane with all this wonderful music. And it's like, geez,
in all honesty, I think Blue Skies might be my pick for this year. While it was
good.
Hellslave this year, I think Blue Skies might have. I don't know. It just, everything seemed right with it. I mean, not to say that there's anything wrong with Hellslave or Cube Cat, but I don't know. There's just something about it.
Stylistically, all three of them nailed it. They nailed what they sought to do. Like music, sound, graphics, and gameplay and everything. All three of them just flipping nailed it. Also working on the Virtua Cop review still, ever so slowly. I am working with a friend on getting source material translated from Japanese into English.
Japanese.
I've never heard it pronounced that way.
Lots of unearthed source material, and some that might even be brand spanking new. That will be coming into that. What will surely be a giant review. And I'm also working on in the background Quarterback Attack and Sega Rally reviews just in the background, just so I've worked ahead while taking forever to do a Virtua Cop episode. So that's
excited. How I'm doing. So is this going to be Lord of the Rings long, or are we looking at a full feature film length?
I think it's just going to be feature film length.
Gotcha. Fair enough. So
just an hour
I'll make sure to change my movie night for set that up for your Virtual Cop review. But
yes. Hopefully it gets released before 2023.
I'm hoping. Anyways, what about you, Peter? What have you been up to in this wonderful thing? And how was your New Year's? Oh, I also forgot. How was you guys' New Year's? This is the first cast of the new year of 2022.
That's
It's
right.
good. I work.
2022.
It's been a cold year so far.
Yeah, I can't wait to see COVID overtake again. 2020 Redux. I like it. And by like it, I mean I hate it.
Same.
Oh God, let's just hope that we're on the final swing of all that.
Remember when we first started this and we took it as a joke and we did that
Yes.
list of... Did we end up removing that? I can't remember if we removed that from the cast.
I did a quarantine stream, like it was a one-off thing. Like, oh, this is just
It's a 1 month long thing. This will be over by
that
summer.
just needed to be my default overlay.
But I can't remember. Did we edit that out or not? I can't remember if because we did that long list of games to play in quarantine or
Yeah,
like
I
inspired
don't
by the
know.
virus.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure we still have that up.
Kind of an
Yeah,
interesting piece of history at this point. It's like, oh, we thought it wasn't that big a deal back then, and then it just slowly got.
Well, we just
bad.
kept kicking the can down the road. you know?
Yeah, because I remember, I think it was either Peter or somebody else was like, hey, this has gotten kind of crazy since we made this episode. Should we keep this in? And
It's kind
I
of shut
honestly,
down the world for a while.
Yeah.
honestly, I don't remember if we kept that in or not. So if you guys look back at the episode, I think it was in March of 2020 or February. I can't remember.
Mhm.
We did a list of that. I know Virus is on there, a few others. But anyways,
that
yes.
damn
Oh,
game.
yeah, that was the infamous one where poor Ben.
I swear I'm going to get through that game at one point.
Okay, Peter,
Yeah.
we got to hear how Peter's been doing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so my update isn't all that exciting. I've, continued to be really busy with, non-Saturn activities, lots of school going on, and
Wait, what do you
work and
mean? You
things like
wrote an
that.
article.
But
A big one.
yeah.
Big
Well,
ones.
just because you need some sort of relaxed time, right? And so during my relaxed time, I've been playing some Saturn Lunar, and so I've figured, okay, I've got 3 weeks around Christmas where I've got no school. I do still have work, but at least it's just work. It's not work and school. And so, yeah, I just started writing, and writing is relaxing to me. I enjoy it. And then in comes the research and the the digging and the fact finding. And yes, just a few days ago, as of us recording today, we published the Lunar article, and those are always fun to do. Those big long articles, I love them. Although it can be such a rabbit hole sometimes, because you'll find some obscure fact somewhere, and then you'll want to dig through the sources, and then those sources lead you to more things, and all of a sudden, oh shoot, 2 hours have gone by, and all I really wanted was like this tiny tidbit of information. So it can totally happen that way. That's the way it goes. And then then it's figuring out, okay, so how much of this are we putting in, how much are we cutting out, etc. But anyways, the article is up now, and hopefully people enjoy it. It might be a while before I can put out something that large again, but it was fun doing it. And yeah, like the next sort of Saturn challenge that I want to tackle is I want to play through Police Knots. I've not done that yet ever, so I want to give that a shot. And then
Saturn
in
is
between
the place to
Lunar
do
and
it.
yeah, right, exactly, yes. And I guess the last thing I want to mention real quick, gaming related, that I've been into is I've just in the last few days I've played through all of the Genesis / Mega Drive Sonic games. I'm very partial to Sonic, the classic original Sonic games. They were what kind of got me into Sega over Nintendo back in the day, and that is one of the reasons I ended up heading for Saturn as opposed to all those other alternate systems. So it was kind of a fun, neat thing. But I think I'm ready to come back to the Saturn and give it some love for sure.
I'm excited. Yeah, you should do for the Police Knots challenge, play through it without being a piece of garbage human being.
I'm not
Not
sure
saying
what
that you,
that
I meant-
means, but I
know
will
it's
try.
not you. It's
I know what
sorry.
he's talking about.
Yeah, I won't spoil it for you, but there's
You know what? That's fair.
It's so-
That'll be my 2022 resolution: is I will not be a garbage human being. Or
He's
whatever
saying
you said.
don't play it how Hideo Kojima would play it.
Yeah, sorry. What
basically.
I meant to say is don't make the character you play be a piece of shit.
Okay,
But that's a feature. No, I'm just kidding.
My question for you, Peter, is how's Bikini Bottom?
Oh, so Okay, I am at 99 spatulas.
Nice.
So it's a GameCube game that Nick sent over to me, and I'm surprisingly enjoying it. I did not think that I would enjoy it simply because it's a TV license, and those don't always turn out to be very good games. But yeah, SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom has been a pleasant surprise. And yeah, the last spatula that I've got to get, you've got to collect 100 spatulas to fully complete the game. The last one that's remaining is with Mr. Patrick Starr, and he just needs me to bring him a few more socks. I've got 6 more socks to find, and
I do need more
and
socks.
life is good. So. So it's an excellent little GameCube game. Like, my GameCube collection's really, really small. I've been thinning it out and everything, but this game just really took me by surprise. So thank you again, Mr. Pandemonium.
And sorry for sending that thing 2 months late.
Yeah, in all honesty, I need to get my GameCube stuff up. I haven't collected for it since 2020, but the prices are so crazy for it. It's like, I don't want to... It's like, why would I spend that much when I could buy like 5 records? Or if I'm insane, which I usually am, buying one box set for that amount of money.
I think GameCube is worse for disc rot too than even Saturn.
Yeah,
Right?
I actually never had any issues with it.
You
but
never had any
apparently
issues?
It's rampant with people. I
I've
don't
been
know,
collecting
never...
Japanese GameCube games, and I don't have any problems with that. Not yet, at least. The Japanese
Well, that's
boxes
cool.
are great, by the way.
They
They're,
take
like, tiny.
good care of their stuff.
Yeah, they do.
I love my GameCube stuff. But I guess last but not least, or I guess second to last but not least is also me. What about you, Ben? What are you up to?
Oh, that's great. No, I was so I'm still thinking of the maple moose that we had brought up earlier. If that's like a name for, say, like a wrestler or something like that, or is that like a nickname for a spy? We're contacting the maple moose. So
Wait, what? I think
Peter's
I'm out of
the
the loop
Maple
on this.
Moose.
yeah, Peter's the maple moose.
Secret's out.
And that's it. All right, so me, it's been a lot of work. In real life, I have a very, very busy job, and so last year was a very busy year for me. I'm finally got that rounded the corner at the end of the year, so I've been able to focus a little bit more on doing some more of the gaming stuff that I wanted to focus on. So fortunately, you'll see a little bit more of me coming in this year, which is fantastic. I've been wanting to do that. Gaming wise, I've moved my TV. My neighbors gave me a 250-pound Sony Trinitron, and
Nice.
this thing was a pain in the ass to move in, but it looks great. It's fantastic. And so I've got it all hooked up, and I've been playing some Atari games on it, Atari 5200, and some of the more recent stuff that I've been playing is the Alan Wake universe games. Started basically with Control, which is absolutely amazing.
Wait, Control's in the Alan Wake universe?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I did not know that. I didn't even think about that. Does that mean that Max Payne is in the Alan Wake universe?
Yeah, they're trying to tie this all together with like Max Payne, Alan Wake, Quantum Break, and there's something else in there. I think I'm just thinking Alan Wake itself, and it's supposed to be eventually this connected universe, and I can't wait for the next game to come out to basically tie it all together, which would be amazing. And so right now I'm playing Quantum Break, and I missed it when it first came out, and it's absolutely fantastic. I'm having a lot of fun with that. But aside from that, Saturn-wise, I'm going to be playing a few of the older games and some of the Japanese stuff that I've been missing out on. And one of these days, I'll finish Virus.
You'll finally venture out of the bedroom, get to the bathroom, and then get stuck in that.
Oh my God! Yeah, I'll get out of the bedroom finally, and then here we go, next room, and I'm trapped.
Seems like a fun game though. If somebody manages to translate it or something. That would be nice. Otherwise, you just got to go with a guide, right?
Yep, pretty much. Or just click everything. Although I tried that and it didn't work.
Yeah,
Or learn Japanese.
doesn't always work. You mean Japanese?
Japanese.
What about you, Pat? What's up?
Well, recently I've been getting back into the vinyl stuff again. I usually take a break from certain hobbies. I'll like do hobbies for a little bit for a while. I'll take a break from it. Like I did retro gaming collecting and PC stuff in 2020 and a little bit of 2021. But kind of stopped when the prices were getting crazy, and it's like anything decent is $50 or more. So I went to Records where it's still kind of high, but at least it's not as expensive for like getting everything on the medium. So I got this giant Beatles Mobile Fidelity box set, and then like a couple months later, I got another box set I found because the first I bought was like $900. Then I got the next box set. It was at Azia, and they mislabeled it as $300.
Is that the
So
Stones?
Oh no, that's the Beatles one. So I got two
that
Beatles
was
box sets.
Oh wow, both mono.
I gave no, they're both stereo boxes.
Oh okay.
I have the mono box. I got that in 14, but that's like a staple in my collection. But then I got like I said, I got that, and I gave the other one to my parents because they're big Beatles fans, and technically I'm gonna get it someday. So it's still in my collection technically, but it's just in the vaults per se. So I'll get that eventually back, but I kind of like it, and I kind of want to hold on to it because I don't know what the price is going to happen with it, so it'll be cool to see if it goes up exponentially or goes down exponentially, but I mean, for $300 is a decent investment, so... And then I found a Rolling Stones box set at another record store a couple weeks later, which I also picked up on. Actually, I picked up on the first on New Year's. I was like, you know what? New year, new vinyl. So I did some vinyl shopping, got that box set. I think it was like $650 for that.
Wow.
It's not the cleanest version of it, but it was a pretty good deal because that's also another $1,000 box. So Zia's been slipping on that. So, and besides that, just listening to a lot of jazz, listening to a lot of Bill Evans, a lot of Art Blakey, all stuff like that. I'm a big jazz guy. And in terms of games, played Snatcher over the holiday. Of course, got to play Snatcher, and of course the homebrew games and
Chris Mingle.
Yeah, definitely Chris Mingle.
Play some Christmas game.
Yeah, and trying to get through Final Fantasy VII Remake, but I'm at a point where I'm bored with it, so
yeah,
I don't know if I want to keep playing it. I don't know. I think I'm tired of finding these quests, so I think I'm just gonna be like, you know what? I'm just gonna finish the game because I'm not gonna finish it otherwise, and then move on to something else that's not Final Fantasy VII. Exactly.
And you and Nick put out, I don't think we talked about this since the last podcast.
Oh, yeah,
you and Nick put out like this huge ass video on Bookslash.
Big ass Bookslash video.
Which was excellent, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Nick
Bob was like, I don't know how to write an article about they've had so many videos on Bookslash, and somebody told him there's like one video you need to watch, and it tells you everything you need to know.
Got one nice, good, cohesive one.
Yeah, because Shadow Master Center was like, and Bob's like, I ain't watching like 8 hours of Bookslash videos. To
8 1-hour live streams.
It's like, here you go. It's a 27-minute video. Is that good enough? It's like, yeah, that's fine. Thanks. And then he watches like, oh, that's awesome video. And shouts out for Bob to doing that. And also, yeah, just want to thank him for bringing us on as video article writers. So that's really cool of him to do.
Yeah.
I think we're all been big fans of us. Honestly, I think I took both Ben and Peter by surprise, though. They're like, wait, what's going on?
I saw Bob in like one of our private chats, and I'm like, what's going on, you guys?
Well, it took me by surprise too, because he just texted us early in the morning. It was like, let's do a podcast. Pat and I were available, so we're like, okay.
Nice.
And then like after the podcast, he's like, so you guys want to write for our site? And I mean, like, that's a no-brainer question. That's like, okay, anything that's on SHIRO, we can get it to like thousands of more eyeballs, by doing that. So
it only helps us out. So
yeah, like the videos we did I did for the article that we wrote up for the translations for Vadergy and Chaos Field. Those already have like in the 300 plus views. So that usually would not be that high in that instance, but maybe it would have been. I can't remember. We were ever growing, so I don't know. So yeah, that was kind of cool to do, and yeah, hopefully we'll keep that going. I was hoping to try to get an article a week up on there for him, but we'll see. I definitely have stuff in the backlog I can put on there that he probably hasn't talked about. So
and it's all stuff we'll still post on Shiro's website anyhow.
Yeah, none of this stuff. Yeah, none of the stuff is not going to be posted. It's going to be a Reader's Digest version, then linked back to Shiro. So,
well, big thanks to Bob.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be great. And I did a write-up for Zaiden's thing that he did. I mean, we talked about this on the SHIRO show, but for folks, real quick, Zaiden brought back the leaderboards for Sega Touring Car, which is kind of a guilty pleasure for me. And any added functionality, bringing back original functionality, I love it, because the Saturn is just one of those consoles that push technology in so many different ways. Like Peter with the you got the hard or the floppy disk drive, you got the serial link cable. They were just way ahead of their time. So the fact that Zaiden did that and brought it back, people can grab a DreamPie Netlink modem and they can play the game and put their scores up online now. So awesome stuff.
Thank you very much, Zaiden. Thank you for everyone in the community for doing all the stuff that you do.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much stuff. It's insane. Yeah. All right. Anything else before we move on that we forgot to bring up? Are we good to go to talk about?
Covers us for news, yeah.
Alrighty. Alright, so today we'll be talking about the famous 3D action-adventure game Tomb Raider. How this topic came up is, I think we literally asked what we should talk about, and Nick was like, Tomb Raider, and I was like, bingo, let's do it.
I literally looked up at my shelf of Saturn games, saw my copy of Tomb Raider, and said, hey,
why not?
What about Tomb Raider? And so the episode was born.
Yes, there's definitely a lot we could talk about with that, and I know there's a lot of outstanding stuff we definitely need to and haven't talked about in the past that I think would be important for this podcast. So I guess to start with, why don't we'll talk a little bit about the game. So the game Tomb Raider, of course, that's the name of it, what they named it, was published by Eidos Interactive, which later, weirdly enough, got bought out by Square Enix. So technically there's a Square Enix game on the Saturn. Does that count?
Sure.
Maybe?
Sure,
it's theirs now.
Yeah,
exactly. But it's developed by Core Designs. I don't think they really developed the game. I didn't know what else they developed besides that. I think it was
Soulstar on the. Core did a bunch of stuff like on the Amiga,
a ton of things,
a ton of stuff on the Genesis. That Soulstar was like a technical marvel on the like Genesis 32X. They had a really good relationship with Sega actually. So.
Yeah, because they basically, I guess, they wanted Tomb Raider to be an exclusive on the Saturn, or is in the works of that. But
well, it's funny because, and I'm really excited for Nick to do a video on this someday. I know that it's gonna happen, but it's gonna be a while because I know that he's really gonna dig up everything. But I actually have to stand corrected because I always thought like for this whole time that it was conceived as a Saturn game. It's from recent research that I have done, it sounds like Sony came to Core looking for a game to push 3D on their platform. And so it was conceived as a PlayStation game. Within that time, it was ported almost simultaneously over to the Saturn as well. And then because of Core's relationship, first they're a UK developer, and they had a huge, strong relationship with Sega over the years, they were able to do a timed exclusivity, like a 6-week advance launch. So then that
was just Europe.
Yes, that was just Europe. And the game launched with some problems, actually. It was missing some things. It had some glitchy stuff that got fixed in the North American version. But in the collective conscious, then it becomes kind of like it was on Saturn first because of that. But and I mean, as a Saturn Uber fan, I would love to just say, oh yeah, it was. But I think there's more information out there that leads me to believe that it was at least conceived as both platforms, or originally conceived as a Sony title.
I think it was they went and they saw the PlayStation at like what was it, like some kind of a
Yeah,
someone who worked on Tomb Raider saw the PlayStation,
right.
And they were like, hey, this is cool, we should do a 3D game,
Right.
And then Toby Gard, famed for making Sega CD classic BC racers,
right. Yes,
he was the one that
did the artwork.
Was like, let's do this, let's make a game with this Lara Croft character and have a nice big 3D adventure, and then they just kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah, it looks like they also did a Swagman, which is, I think, is one Peter talked about quite a bit.
Right.
Yep.
Yes.
On the Saturn.
They did a lot of Mega Drive games. Core Design did a lot of Sega CD games. It looked like they might have done more Sega CD games than just standard Genesis Mega Drive.
And this was before IDOS. IDOS. And I think it was actually supposed to be a dude, but they didn't want to look at his ass like for the whole game. So they were like, let's make it a chick.
Yeah.
that's from some old IGN or Next Generation interviews that they were just like.
So they also did the Fighting Force, which I think was the Fighting Force. It was supposed to be a final fight game on Saturn, but
that's right. Yeah, never released, but.
Or a Streets of Rage, was it? I can't remember. I think it was one of those.
Yeah, sorry, when I say Final Fight, I meant Streets of Rage.
He meant Streets of Rage, yeah. Yeah, Fighting Force.
I mean, eventually the second one came out on Dreamcast, but I mean, was it Fighting Force 2 specifically, or was it? I can't remember, but I think it was the first one. Then it never came out on Saturn, but the second one came out on Dreamcast. So.
Right, because by the time because it did so incredibly well on PlayStation, helped move consoles and act as like a benchmark for 3D on the PlayStation, everything like that. It almost became synonymous with PlayStation in people's minds, I guess. And then IDOS was like, and then Sony approached IDOS, and it's actually, I found a citation for this. Like, they literally reached out and said, let's secure this as an exclusive Tomb Raider 2. And at that time, IDOS was like, okay, well, I mean, Saturn's not doing well anyway, so it makes sense. Yeah.
You know what I'd like to know? Why in Japan the game is called Tomb Raiders?
I was wondering the same thing.
Right, by Victor, right? Yeah, they named it Tomb Raiders.
Maybe because she raids multiple tombs in the game, and that makes sense.
A pre-existing name, you don't think?
I mean, it's weird because I don't think they've actually changed that much or any of the game content as far as I know. As far as I know, it's the same game, but why the title was pluralized will remain a mystery.
I did not research that part.
Maybe it's a Japanese thing, because like there's like, I think a lot of games that are like have Japanese English-esque names always are plural in a way, like Police Knots or there's also Snatcher. That's singular, but.
In Megan Marie's 20 Years of Tomb Raider, I guess like a book commemorating Core Design's Jeremy Heath Smith reminisce about the deal, stating how difficult but sensible a decision it had been. Sony was acutely aware of how successful it suddenly was. People were buying PlayStations to play Tomb Raider, and there were so many other good games coming out on PlayStation, so the incentive for people to buy that over Saturn was a simple choice, basically.
Maybe we should give some back statement to that, where basically... originally, the Tomb Raider is released on the Saturn and Europe exclusively.
Yep.
And then later coming to North America and the PlayStation in both countries and a couple of months later in November. So it's about a couple week gap, I guess.
Right.
About. And then like we were saying, once they saw the success, they decided to make a deal where Tomb Raider 2 was going to exclusively come out on the PlayStation.
Yeah.
So, PlayStation.
They were
PC.
going to make a Saturn version of Tomb Raider.
They were.
2. It
totally.
was in development.
Yeah, it was in development.
Yes.
And then shelved for, quote, technical issues, which,
On May 21st of 1997, IGN posted Sony Vice for Tomb Raider 2 exclusive. Executives at Sony are looking to make Tomb Raider 2 an exclusive PlayStation title. And that goes on, and we can put that in the show notes or whatever. But yeah, one thing I learned that I didn't realize is that it was actually ported to Saturn. So it was like code that they had started working on the PlayStation version, probably they got a quicker start, because of the development tools. If we're being realistic, I mean, we know a bunch of homebrew developers, and we know how, the things they have to jump through to push. So they were doing like, or maybe, similar to NBA Jam, like Nick explained in his video, where they're kind of doing it simultaneously and porting the code back and forth. But yeah, so
see a nice, like going through older publications at the time, I am positive that it was developed first on Saturn, at least begun first on Saturn, and then eventually transitioned to PlayStation. So I'm not, I don't want to say I'm 100% on it because I'm not. We don't know. Who knows?
I'm not either. This is what I got recently from Sega Retro, and I know Sega Retro is not 100%, but this is it. This is why I'm really excited for Nick to do some more digging, because right now I couldn't say either way. Yeah, but I would love to read those sources too, Peter, because
it's a lot of pre-production work for Nick's Tomb Raider video.
I know.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. And
nailing it down is going to be interesting. Yeah.
I want to direct you guys' attention to a Sega Saturn magazine UK article. It was, or I guess, a brief. It wasn't really an article. The magazine issue was July 1997, and this was right when Tomb Raider 2 was pretty much announced that it was going to only be on the PlayStation and PC. And so they have a little brief called Tomb Raider 2 Jeopardy! Shocking news reaches Sega Saturn magazine. And they say, talking about how Tomb Raider 2 is, they're vying for a PlayStation exclusive, and they're probably not going to put it out on Saturn. And at the end of the article, at the end of this brief write-up, it says Core have confirmed that their two other major products, Fighting Force and the potentially amazing Ninja, will, in bold, definitely be coming for the Saturn. Neither of those games came out for the Sega Saturn.
Yeah, that's right.
Both
okay, so, and then the other thing too is, for a while, especially in the British magazines, there was talk that, because remember at the time Virtua Fighter 3 had been announced for the Saturn, and there was talk that there was going to be some sort of a graphic accelerator cartridge that would be developed for the game, and that Core had received some sort of early access to this cartridge, and that they were going to be developing Tomb Raider 2 using this accelerated cartridge. For a while there, a few months, it was on again, off again with Saturn Tomb Raider 2 before Sony finally locked it up. And I don't know if there's any truth to that, or whether it was simply just a business move on the part of Sony to lock it down. But yeah, it took a while before it was finally confirmed. But yeah, I mean, and Sony locked them down until December 31st, 1999. They locked down the Lara Croft, sort of the IP there. So, kudos to them. I mean, they had the money, so they went ahead and did it. And
I feel awkward wearing the shirt.
You traitor. As soon as it ran out, though, Eidos was quick to move to Dreamcast, to get it out on Dreamcast, because at that time Dreamcast was actually doing gangbusters at the beginning there, at least.
Yeah, because Tomb Raider Last Revelation Chronicles did end up coming out on the Dreamcast.
Yeah. I want to read this real quick. So again, take this with a grain of salt, because again, I do respect Sega Retro as a source. I just know that they're not like infallible. And I mean, what I've learned from Nick's research is that you can always do more research. You can always find more breadcrumbs. So I'll definitely want to hear his follow-up. But it just says, history on the development. Tomb Raider was one of the first true 3D titles to be undertaken by Core Design following a trip to the United States, in which producer Jeremy Heath Smith caught wind of Sony's PlayStation console and asked the company to come up with ideas for 3D games. Tomb Raider was put forward by BC Racers animator Toby Gard, who did the bulk of the design work surrounding Lara Croft and her in-game animations. Eidos and Core signed a deal with Sega to ship the game 6 weeks early in Europe as an exclusive title on the Saturn. While Tomb Raider became one of the best-selling Saturn games on the market, Saturn sales were less than a quarter of what the PlayStation had. And at the very beginning, it just says that it was conceived as a game for PlayStation and then ported to the Saturn and released on Saturn first. That's their take based on certain citations. But again, this is interesting, because I do kind of feel like we can't really pigeonhole it precisely. It could have been one of those things where it was like being developed simultaneously, because both consoles were very viable at that time, right? So it's like they would have just said, oh, well, they're both going to be a hit, right? They didn't know yet. So I imagine just like NBA Jam, for example, they'd have been doing them at the same time, So how fair is it to say that one was first or the other? I don't know.
To me, that whole sort of story goes to show how shrewd the folks in charge at Sony were. Like, I mean, they came into a scene where Sega and Nintendo were kind of doing things the way that they had always done them, and they just kind of came in and treated it, in my view, as much more of a business, as opposed to just being a game company. And so they outmaneuvered Sega in that respect, in my opinion.
And history is written by the victors, right? So that's the other reason why I have a tendency to kind of just be a little, hesitant to just accept it out of hand,
Well, wasn't there a tweet recently by Sony that they were celebrating,
Sony literally tried to rewrite history on their official UK Twitter account. They
right.
Like pretend that it didn't even
right.
They acted like PlayStation was the first console to have Tomb Raider. They are wrong.
Well, they took credit for the day that it released on Saturn, right? They took credit for it releasing on PlayStation that day when it wouldn't come for like another 6 weeks. Yeah, that was funny.
They got called out and they never apologized.
No, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of sad, really, that and people are like, "Oh, what does it matter? It did better on the PlayStation," and it's like that's not really the point,
Yeah.
It performed better on the PlayStation too, arguably. I mean, even John Linneman did like a breakdown of it, and it I think it was like 20 to 25 frames per second on Saturn.
Yeah, it looks better on PlayStation. Yeah, it ran better. You have to remember that the people making Saturn on the Tomb Raider basically did not use the second video display processor.
Right.
And for those uninitiated, the Saturn has 2 video display processors known often called VDP1 and VDP2. VDP1 takes care of like the characters on screen, a lot of the polygonal environments, whereas VDP2 is more for like backgrounds, skyboxes.
Right.
That's the same case
Infinite
with 2D
plane.
sprite-based games. Like if you're playing Panzer Dragoon, that water that extends into the horizon, that's VDP2.
Right.
Like the skyboxes, that's VDP2. The dragon, that's VDP1.
But it was in a cave, so there's no real way you could use it.
You couldn't. No. Yeah. Tomb Raider was pretty much only using VDP1. It was if it was using VDP2, it was barely pumping its engines at all.
Right.
And therefore, it wasn't using all of the Saturn's power. But like you said, David, it's in a cave. Now, Burning Rangers figured out how to get some guts out of VDP2 for its largely indoor environments. But, Core did not take the time, probably didn't have the time to figure that out. They probably had to pump this out ASAP.
That's what we have to point out, is that a lot of these developers nowadays, they're able to get all out of the Saturn because we have retrospect knowledge. And, even though technically they're reinventing the wheel per se, because then we don't have the tools and the technology that we had with Sega.
Right.
For the most part, all these tools are really new to us, and they have all the time in the world to use them and learn them. While Core Designs had like maybe a couple months or a year and a half before their funding ran out, and they were completely dead in the water.
Yeah, that's a really important point too, because PlayStation, for example, I know you watched that. I don't know, it's a postmortem, or it was like an interview with the guys at Naughty Dog. And they talked about how they really had to like crack open the PlayStation and work outside the constraints that Sony wanted them to.
Right.
It never would have passed QA, but they kind of got it in under the radar. So it's like PlayStation had a very, very strict construct of how you were to work with it, right? Whereas Saturn, it's kind of like a sandbox. It's like, here's a bunch of chips. Good luck. I mean, you can, if you're smart enough and you can get creative, you can work things out, and that's. You mentioned Burning Rangers. Well, Low Score Boy went on YouTube with a video talking about how ass backwards that game is in terms of like how it actually works.
Right.
It's counter logic to like how anybody would design games before that. They kind of used a bunch of like on the fly methods to make stuff work, which is what we're seeing a lot of homebrew developers do now. They're like, okay, let's try to like forget about the confines of like what would pass QA. Let's just make this work, however we can, so yeah.
Like what Steve Snake from Iguana UK, NBA Jam developer, and many other games, said that key difference between Saturn and PlayStation in the late 90s is that yeah, the Saturn, like you said, it was just this bundle of chips, this open sandbox, and Sega said, all right, do what you can with it, have fun.
Mhm.
Whereas PlayStation, they were very strict with what you could do with it.
Yeah.
But what they allowed their developers to do, they were very clear with their instructions, with their engines and their templates. They made it extremely easy.
Amazing
for
tools.
any development company to make a PlayStation game. And, you know, Sega didn't do that. You could get more out of the Saturn in some ways, but Sega would not hold your hand like Sony did. They would say, like, all right, good luck, bud. Have fun. We're not even going to translate our manuals for you.
Yeah.
I mean, they translated them, but poorly.
Some.
Like it's,
Right.
Some of them.
some of them, but very poorly. Sorry.
Because of the resource bottleneck, like you, Suzuki, said, you were lucky if you could get like 1.5 times the performance by
Right.
using both CPUs, if you could figure that out.
Exactly.
That's
And so
what
in
you
the
would
case
benefit.
of Core, you know, they had probably limited time to make these Tomb Raider ports. And that's, you know, they were able to make the PlayStation 1 work as well as it did because they probably had a bunch of templates and engines and, you know, guides and help from Sony to figure it out. Whereas with Sega, they were just like, all right, here's a dev kit. Go for it, bud. Maybe they had SGL, you know, Sega Graphics Library was out at the time. I don't know if they used it, though.
There was a quote saying that it improved while they were, there was an improved release that came while they were already working on it. And so
Classic.
they had to like go back and make certain tweaks, but it's like they couldn't completely. Yeah. So they were working with an earlier version of SGL. Yeah.
Of SGL, yeah.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about the differences in using the actual second chip on the Saturn and how difficult that had to be for developers at the time, considering the time constraints that we had at the time on developers.
The second CPU.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you have something where you're like distributing it on both the PlayStation and the Saturn, where you had this easy development for the PlayStation, and then they're like, okay, and now bring that over to the Saturn as well with its dual chips, and you have to figure that out. And oh, by the way, you have to be done in 8 weeks. And so I'm sure that a lot of the developers were like, oh crap, we'll just figure out the one chip, we'll figure out what we need to do to get it on this, and then we're done.
Most cross-platform games, if not any, or if not all, didn't use the second chip because, like, when you had games like Panzer Dragoon Zwei, right, which is a proprietary, you know, platform exclusive, they could take their time and they could engineer that game to use the two processors. But when you're going cross-platform, it takes too much time to try to squeeze anything out of that second CPU. Not to mention the fact that you needed the hardware to debug it. Like Nick pointed out in his virtual racing video, you know, it's like you either had that or you didn't have that. So I think the point, a lot of people will just turn it off, like to begin with. And they'll be like, okay, at least this is straightforward, coming over from a one CPU system to another, you know, one CPU situation.
You mentioned that Tomb Raider was using SGL, right? Like
Early, yeah, like
early builds. Of it. So it was probably
my
using...
mic just cut out. Hold on a second.
No, you're good.
Wait.
We hear you.
Oh, you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
My sorry, my headphones cut out. Yeah, I just read last night, and now I'm trying to find that article.
Because if it was using SGL, then they were probably using the second processor. Because the whole point of SGL was to basically make a dual processor 3D graphics engine, an easy way for developers to get both processors working.
Okay.
Not necessarily the video display processors, but like the two SH2s, the CPUs. Doesn't necessarily mean that Tomb Raider is a dual processor game. It could very well just be using one.
Yeah, I'll try to find that quote while we continue to talk, because there was a quote regarding a new SGL being dropped during the development cycle.
So we've been talking all this technical stuff. Does anyone want to talk about like
the game?
Yeah,
Talking about
into
the
it.
game, not practice.
What is a Tomb Raider?
Yeah, I guess for the background on the game itself, if you have not heard Tomb Raider, where have you been? But Tomb Raider is an action platform in which you play the famous archaeologist, or Tomb Raider, if you will, Lara Croft, or was it how you say it in British terms?
Lara? It's Lara,
Lara
right?
Croft.
So Lara Croft.
Yeah, Lara. If you say Laura, my wife.
Laura.
Lara Croft.
Sounds like a Kenjiano game.
But she's the OG queen of the video game era, of the boomer shooter and the boomer gaming era. And you are sent to explore 4 different areas: Peru, Greece, Egypt, and the famous Atlantis, to find treasures and try to get the treasure for this lady that really wants it, that hired you. and it's an interesting game. I was curious, what are your overall thoughts on it? So, I guess if that's cool, I can go first on mine.
Do it.
Yeah, go for it.
I played it actually for the first time a few days ago. I've never actually played a Tomb Raider game before.
Wow.
Damn.
So-
Tell me
Really?
all about it.
I was very disappointed with it. It had a lot of
All right.
It
All
had a lot
right.
of-
That's a ghost
Did
pepper.
you play it on
You're-
N-Gage?
You're fired.
No. But the game had a ton of input lag. Like I tried two different controllers, my Retrobit one and like a wired one, and it seemed like I would hit a button and then like a second later it would do something. Like I can't tell you how many jumps that I missed, based off of me hitting the button at the wrong time or not before the jump. And it was just a nightmare. Like, I don't know, like in controlling it, I like run to a wall and she's like, and I have to like back up like tank controls and like navigates. The buttons are very unforgiving, so you have to hold the button down to really do stuff. Sorry, there's yelling on the other.
You're spoiled, Pat. I have to.
You have to hold the button down to do things. I didn't realize that you had to hold the button. There's like a lot of holding. Like I kept pressing stuff, like swimming, and it's just like she's like staying in place. It's like, oh, you actually have to hold the button down to swim, which is.
Did you go to the tutorial gym before doing any of the gameplay?
That would
Absolutely
have been helpful.
not.
I didn't know that that existed.
At the main menu, there is a option to. I think some versions of the game call it Laura's house. I think this calls it the gym, but it still takes place at Laura's house. But that's a whole like tutorial mode where Laura like narrates, "Hey, welcome to my house. This is my pad. I'm British. Here's how you play this game and control me." And
yeah, I don't know. It's just like I assumed that it would be straightforward. I didn't really expect. I didn't really expect going in. So
What you're describing, believe it or not, used to be normal. I am afraid to say, before Super Mario 64 came out, I think people accepted that input lag you're talking about, where you're like you have to like press the button and then she backs up, and then you press the button and she moves to the side, and it's like a second delayed, and then you play like Super Mario 64 and it like revolutionized everything. You were like, oh my god, he's actually moving as I'm moving, that was mind-blowing. Croc had the same thing.
Yeah, the first Mortal Kombat compared to the second Mortal Kombat was notorious for that. The first one, so much input lag, but everybody was so used to it at that point that when Mortal Kombat 2 came out and it was just
revolutionary.
Oh my god.
yeah, it just was I was just a bit disappointed in controls, especially with not only the input lag, but the lag of the game itself. It's really has some frame issues, especially in the larger corridors. It definitely becomes a nightmare. In the combat, like I said, I think I probably should have played that tutorial island, but you'll see in the footage right now that I'm having a lot of problems, like especially when I'm shooting like the things, I'm like rolling around in circles, doing backflips, trying to shoot them to death.
Yep.
And like I guess I got shotgun and magnum shells, but I don't know how to use the guns for them, or if I had to find a gun for it.
Those damn bats, right?
you got to find the guns.
The bats are
wolves?
fine.
The bats are okay.
It was the bear and like the wolves that were the issue. Like I remember.
Did you get to the dinosaurs?
T-Rex?
Not yet. I think
you're gonna hate them.
I got to the area where it's in the cave with it's like a stable in there, and I'm looking in there. All suddenly a bear just tackles me to the ground and like gets me stuck in a corner, and like just keeps running at me, and I'm like stuck in the corner trying to shoot him, and then he just kills me.
Having played these games a few times, I am taking a lot of joy with Pat's play-by-play experience of his modern take on going in blind on the first Tomb Raider game.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect it to be as, I guess the nicest way to say is archaic as it was.
It was pretty.
I know,
archaic,
probably
yeah.
I might be pissing off a bunch of people by saying this, but like, I mean, I don't hate the game. Honestly, I kind of enjoyed it. I really liked it, and I kind of want to go back in and play it again because I actually felt really accomplished going through the caves and stuff, and I really had a good time playing it, minus the lag and getting glitched in the corner.
Here's what you got to do.
Get good.
Well, that, but there's a couple things you can do. First is to just kind of retune your mind into the time when there were no standards for these types of 3D action games. particularly with Tomb Raider, it is very much a grid-based level design. Think of an isometric 2D game or like a top-down, or those types of games where everything's kind of laid out in a grid. Tomb Raider is laid out in a grid. All your jumps, all your movement options are designed to be going from one grid to the next, and you can see it with like the square-shaped textures that are everywhere in the square-shaped platforms and boxes.
I never
Some
think
of them
about
might be
that.
slanted. That's kind of the way it works, and it's not so much like Mario 64 where you press A and immediately dude jumps. It's like when you press A, Laura begins to start jumping. It's like you're puppeteering her as opposed to her being an extension of your thumbs.
Agreed.
That's kind of what it's like. The other thing you can do is say f it all and play Tomb Raider Anniversary for PS2. That is a recreation of the first Tomb Raider game where you get to enjoy the wonderful level design with modern controls that work the way you will want them to work. Not grid-based, none of that bullshit. It just works great.
Interesting. I never thought of it as a
yeah.
grid-based perspective. Like I didn't even think of that. I was like thinking about it like, because I know Metal Gear Solid actually is that way too. It's technically first one's a grid-based game in a way. Even if it looks 3D, there's definitely a lot of grid-based interactions with that. So
exactly, yeah, it's kind of like that. Except this is cameras behind Laura. You don't see Snake's ass.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I know.
He's such a nice ass too.
But anyway, that's what I
boxy.
do.
Anyways.
If you just cannot stand Saturn Tomb Raider or PlayStation, if you can't stand the first original version of Tomb Raider on any platform, I would at least recommend trying Tomb Raider Anniversary on PS2, just so you can experience the kind of what the retro Lara is like on a, I guess, more modern take of the game. A more playable version of it to modern standards, if that's how you want to put it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I think Open Lara is doing it on Dreamcast too, right? There's a Dreamcast branch of that, and then there's a 3DO branch of it, like recently. So they're putting it on other platforms, but yeah, the Saturn version is like 20 frames per second. I think when you get into a big cavern like that, it drops and it's significant. Like you feel it. You don't get that on the PlayStation version.
PlayStation keeps it at 30, pretty consistent. Saturn, everything's a little darker.
The sound is really compressed.
There are some textures that work better on the Saturn than they do on PlayStation, and some of the shading effects tend to work better on Saturn, but the visual overall look of it is just brighter, vibrant, and less stuttery on PlayStation.
That's mostly because of how they do Gorod shading. Saturn does Gorod shading really differently, so everything is really dark and grungy. But all the articles that I've read say that the water looks better on Saturn. I'm like, really? Does it? I don't know. Does it? They look similar to me.
It'd be nice if it would stop lagging enough to be able to see that.
So, kind of going around the circle here, we're talking about kind of our impressions in Saturn Tomb Raider. Let's start with Peter. I feel like we haven't heard from you a lot. Tell us, what did you think? Have you played it before? Is this your first time?
So I got Saturn Tomb Raider in '96.
Hell yeah.
And I absolutely loved it. The reason it was so special to me at the time was up until then, I hadn't yet seen anything come out on the 32-bit systems that was super original, that wasn't an arcade port. You know what I mean? So to me, this was like, okay, this is what 32 bits can get you. Like, this couldn't have existed on the Genesis or Super NES or whatever. And it's not something that came over from the arcade. So this is a completely original console IP, and it was great. I love the controls, but then again, I mainly play games from the Saturn era. I don't find the delays to really bother me that much in between, like pressing the buttons and the actions. You get used to it extremely quickly, in my opinion. I love Croft Manor. That's the training level. So you get to go through Lara's mansion. Yeah. And, there's different areas that you have to sort of... And it's very naturally done. This wasn't done before in games where you get this sort of awesome tutorial. So she starts off with, oh, I've got some boxes in here and I haven't moved them into storage, and so you have to figure out how to vault onto ledges and boxes and whatever. Then you go to her ballroom, which she's converted into a gym, and so there's a bunch of little obstacle courses that she set up for you to go through, and the last sort of thing is you go to her private pool, and she's got a little pool there, and so you can jump in and sort of understand how to swim around and whatever. And the best thing ever. So you got to understand, I'm a teenager at this point. So Lara gets out of the pool and she says in her delightful British accent, right, I'd better get out of these wet clothes. And it just fades out right there and then. It was like, what?
Nude code.
What just happened?
Gotta find the nude code.
So it was just, it was delightfully done. It was just amazing. And then you get into the game. So my initial experiences were the first few levels.
The bathroom.
Well, it was a hard experience after that. Let's put it that way.
Oh my god.
Anyways,
throbbing your way into the first level of the game.
I just thrust it in. I did not hold back. It was a full on. Anyways, okay.
You're in Peru, or wherever.
We're in Peru. First of all, the storyline was interesting because it was a lot more mature than save the princess or defeat the Eggman or whatever. So it had a bit of maturity to it. I thought the first few levels were very dark, and that kind of bothered me because it was like, okay, I'm having a hard time seeing in certain situations. Got used to the bats and the wolves pretty quickly. Fell into that pit there, and the bear just scared the daylights out of me. I wasn't expecting anything like that in that sort of adventure. But what really sort of cemented my love for the original Tomb Raider, for Saturn Tomb Raider specifically, is you finally get to this scene in like the 4th or 5th level where Lara finds the first piece of the Scion.
Yeah.
Or the Scion, and there's a scene that plays out, a cutscene where Pierre, this other guy, was chasing her. I can't remember if it's Pierre or some other guy. Anyways, it turns out that she realizes, okay, there's more to this than I originally thought. Like the lady that hired me, Jacqueline Natla, I think her name was, she's after more pieces of it. And then you end up going to the next sort of world. So you go from Peru to, it's not the Egypt one. It's Greece, I think. I can't remember. Anyways, it's a
Greece.
completely... Was it Greece? Okay. Completely different theme, tile sets. The puzzles are different. It was phenomenal. And right there, it was like, okay, they nailed this. They got this so right. And again, just keep in mind that my experience that I'm recounting to you is from somebody who... this was before Mario 64. This was before modern games and controls and conventions. So this was just cutting edge. This was top of the line.
Absolutely.
Right. And then, there are some levels, some of the really large open levels where that frame rate, like it drops to like 15 or even 12. And it does get a little bit janky in some of the really open levels. But overall, it's just a fantastic adventure. The story is engaging, it's thoughtful, and it never exposes so much so that, it doesn't spoon feed everything to you. You have to sort of interpret and follow it and kind of, so your imagination plays a role in it. And overall, it's a sensational adventure from start to finish. I absolutely loved it. I play through it regularly to this day on the Saturn with all the controls because it's just that good. It was a big reason why back in the day I ended up getting a PlayStation. Because I had a Saturn for a number of years before I finally jumped ship. But I did get the PlayStation along with Tomb Raider 2, which, I'll just briefly mention that it wasn't nearly as satisfying as the first game, in my opinion. Because the other component that it made me realize is that Tomb Raider 1 doesn't have very many human enemies. Like, you're mainly working against, you're figuring out how to move through the environment. There's traps, there's... puzzles to solve, and there's animals to fight off, but you're not really fighting too many human enemies, whereas Tomb Raider 2 became much more about, competing or fighting against human enemies, and that wasn't nearly as appealing. But just generally speaking, just to wrap up here, my overall impressions was that this was a very important title in sort of the history of video gaming. It obviously was a boon for Sony. They saw it for what it was. They, locked it down, which was a brilliant move on their part. I'm just happy that we got the first game on the Saturn, and like you were saying, ultimately, many more of the Tomb Raider games did come to the Dreamcast. But it was really cool back in '96 to play Tomb Raider. It was like nothing that had ever existed before.
My big question for you, Peter, is you were cutting your teeth on this for the Saturn right when it was like brand spanking new. Did you at any point, like, of course you got a PlayStation so you could play the newer releases? Did you at any point while playing Tomb Raider 1 think, man, I really should have gotten this on a different platform? Or were you like, no, this is fine, this is good?
No, this was amazing. This, like, Saturn Tomb Raider, and I'd had eventually seen Tomb Raider 1 on the PlayStation, and it did run with a smoother frame rate, and it, just the type of game it was, it worked better on PlayStation hardware. I did like the water effects better on the Saturn, but no, under no circumstances did I to be honest, I thought, how could this get any better? Like, it was difficult for me to imagine at the time how it could possibly get better, and funny anecdote, there was a local mom and pop video game store that I always got my latest releases from. And at the time that Tomb Raider 2 came out on the PlayStation, he had it running like as a demo on the big TV in the store there. And we were watching it, him and I, just the demo playing through, and we were watching the full motion video opening. And he said to me, Peter, there's going to come a time where this is going to be not nearly as good as real-time graphics. I was like, this guy's, what is he talking about? How is this even possible? And then, like just a few years later, here we were. So yeah, it was definitely, it was such a quantum leap forward that it made it difficult for a young gamer like me to imagine how things could possibly get better.
And obviously it didn't, so... What about you, Ben? What are your thoughts on Tomb Raider?
Oh, so what a great game. This was something that came out when I was growing up, and I got it on the PC, run it through MS-DOS back in the day. And this was so good, and like Peter said, it was very groundbreaking at the time. So we look at it now, and it looks... grainy and textured and all this, but it was really, really impressive back when it first came out. And so when I was playing this, this was something that I enjoyed. Say, it would compare it to Uncharted, for example, today. And we would look at this and it'd be fine. We weren't looking at it like it was a problem, or even the controls. It wasn't any issue. It was all about getting used to the game with the controls and the visuals that they had at the time. And so playing this game again is fantastic because I haven't played this in so many years. It's ridiculous. I barely remember my playthrough back when I played it back in 96, 97 timeframe. And so it was great. At the beginning, I was like, okay, let's go, let's do this. And it was like handing an arcade racing game to a 6-year-old where they're going back and forth in the stage, driving, because I was trying to get used to, walking just straight forward without actual controls of the camera. And then I'm like, okay, let's jump forward. And then I jump straight up, and I'm like, no, forward. And then I jump up again, and I'm like, okay, all right, this is going to take some getting used to. And so it took me a little bit to get used to the controls on the Saturn again. But once you take a little bit of time to realize how to time your leaps and to time your forward jumps, and the first time that you successfully pull off one of those side jumps is very, very satisfying. And so the bear pit, like both of y'all have mentioned, was definitely one of those moments where you're just like, oh shit, you turn around and you got to kill the bear out of the pit. And it's fantastic. The reasons to go back to it are numerous, including, in case you didn't know, all of the secrets that are in the game. It's fun to go back and try to find all the secret areas, and they are very, very well hidden. Some of those are in places that you wouldn't even think. I had to go look for guides on some of them to try to just figure out where they were at. And just a fun game overall. I have very few complaints. The only real complaints I have with it is, so knowing that the frame rate drops on the Saturn, the visuals will get a little glitchy every now and then, stuff like that. But it's just part of the age of the games that came out during that era. So I kind of give it a pass in a way.
Yeah, I agree with everything Ben just said, and Peter. Do you mind if I go?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So to echo what Peter and Ben said is like, I can't even overstate. It's impossible for me to overstate how much of a revolution this game was. First of all, it was an adult game. You had a sexy woman with, she was well endowed. There was a lot of appeal for teenagers. You saw it as a very edgy adult game. But this was back when, like, whole not just franchises, but genres were kind of being invented. You had Quake, which was hugely revolutionary, and you'd see it on multiple platforms. You'd see it in the game store with like a whole slew of boxes on the shelf. It was that big. They had to stock several copies. Tomb Raider was just about the best thing going back then. It was like Tomb Raider, Quake, and Need for Speed, like the original Need for Speed. And it's like those, but Tomb Raider, it did so many amazing things that we take for granted in gaming now, like climbing on ledges and strafing over on a ledge, flicking a switch and having an action happen in the other room and having to go find out what it was. That wasn't something that I had ever done before in gaming. It was like, okay, I just moved this lever and I heard a sound. Now I have to go find out what that sound was. I was trying to think like all the things that we kind of take for granted in gaming. The music was amazing. The audio, the voice, like Peter was saying, where she talks to you and she kind of has this dialogue of everything she's doing. Again, like I'd never played a game like that. I mean, the 3D games I played were like Star Fox on the SNES and like, I don't know, early games on the PlayStation were like Jet Moto and stuff like that. But this really was just like, okay, wow, this is pushing adventure games and making them action oriented. It was just crazy. I'd run to the fridge and try to like lead the butler into the fridge, and then you'd run out and flick the switch and try to lock him in there. And he would like clip through the fridge, as a kid, you do all that kind of random stuff in her house and stuff it was just fun, there was this issue where you would jump up. She would just jump straight up and she wouldn't grab onto a ledge. And you kind of had to like figure out how to actually like grab the ledge and climb up on. Something you would just totally take for granted in a game nowadays, like Uncharted or something. But back then it was just like learning all this stuff for the first time.
Most games you just run face forward into a cliff.
Yes.
They'll just do whatever. They'll grab it. They'll vault over it. No, you gotta press A to jump, hold B to catch the ledge, and keep holding B for her to get up over it.
And the fact that
it was like that's whatever. But
you running forward and pressing a button to have her do a somersault and turn around and start firing, like games have that now where there's like a special button to just about face really quickly. Mm-hmm. But I feel like Tomb Raider was one of the first ones that did that. And you could just come up shooting, so as far I played, and I'll try to finish up here. I played it on the PlayStation first. We had a PlayStation in our house before we had a Saturn. So that's how I experienced it first. I wouldn't get it on Saturn until much later when I was like collecting Saturn games and it was cheap. And the thing that I remember thinking when I played it on Saturn was, I like this pad better. I like the way the Saturn pad feels better. So because I didn't really enjoy using the digital PlayStation pad back then, I mean, the dual analog was great, but or DualShock, but back then it was just the digital PlayStation pad, and it wasn't very comfortable, and it just made that janky, like quirky movement even jankier. So yeah, playing it on the Saturn pad was great. And then there's some frame dip, but it's not that big of a deal. I think the Saturn version was perfectly fun to play. It's just like Pat said, you kind of have to go in just kind of accepting that that's the way old platformers were. Like Croc has the same exact thing going on where you end up falling off ledges so many times, and it kind of makes you throw your controller sometimes. But yeah,
what did you think of it, Nick?
Yeah. So I'd played both the Saturn and PlayStation versions years ago, just when I got into retro games. I can't remember which one I beat it on, and I definitely played and beat the Anniversary Edition for PS2 as well. which even if you've already played this game, that's a good game to play. It might sound like you're just playing the same game again, but it's a whole new experience, a whole new lens. It's worth your time. But yeah, similar to Dave's situation, growing up, we had a PlayStation, so I played a lot of Spyro and Crash. Tomb Raider was one of those games I'd like watch people play while growing up. I didn't really play it. My wife played it a ton growing up. That's part of what got her into video games. And just, but yeah, eventually I did wind up playing, the original glorious Tomb Raider in the way it was meant to be played on the Sega Saturn. Once I got into the console, something to be said about the Saturn having the first Tomb Raider, since Virtua Fighter is a big part of what inspired them to do this in the first place. It is often said that people who worked on Tomb Raider saw 3D polygonal fighters in Virtua Fighter and thought, oh, hey, this is something that we can do now. We can have polygon-based humans in video games and have them be playable humans made with polygons. There was a quote from one of the developers, and I seem to have lost it. I had it open in a tab. I think it was from Toby Gard had mentioned that the original Virtua Fighter only had 2 women, and oftentimes he'd see people playing as them, even though there were only 2 of them, just to have like a woman fighter. So he, that might have been for him part of the reason why. It seemed like there were a lot of reasons why they chose a woman. One, because they didn't want to look at Nathan Drake's ass, and another perhaps, because they just wanted to see more women in games. But anyway, I don't know. I really enjoy it. I think it's a great game to go back to. It's a good reminder of what 3D adventure games were like before things were easier to control, I guess. And the game itself, I think, just it does run well on Saturn. It has its frame rate issues, but revisiting it, I played it, a few levels into it over the past few days. I didn't rebeat it since the podcast, but it's an absolute joy to play. I think the combat actually works really well. There's nothing like doing backflips away from something while shooting at it.
Yes.
That's always fun. That never gets old. Getting destroyed by T-Rexes that you forgot were behind the corner, always fun, never gets old. And then eventually finding a way to destroy said T-Rex.
It was tense. That game
Always
brought
fun.
like the tense vibe with
It
the
did.
wolves. Like
The bear was like a
another thing.
legendary moment that's been brought up
Yes.
repeatedly. The T-Rex was, it really did it for me, especially how that can just one hit kill you right away. Just like you approach it the wrong way, you're dead. It ate you, like you're a goner. So, and finding your secret passages to like go up and shoot it from like a cave up top, or maybe you just take it on.
I think one thing that really sort of helped that tension is there was no background music in this game except for little snippets at certain situations, right?
Right.
So,
that added to it. Yeah, like the music won't tense up, when some of these surprises happen. They'll just get you.
I don't think the DOS version had that. I think the DOS version was just ambient sound effects and stuff. But it had that cool looking box.
Yeah.
But I think Laura's character model looked better on Saturn. And this might be a hot
I
take
agree with that,
because I think that the character models in Resident Evil look better on Saturn as well. They're a little more meaty. Like they just, because of the way that Saturn draws polygons, I just like the way they look. Whereas the Gorad shading looks better on PlayStation, but the models in general just look more human.
Yeah, the levels and environments, and particularly the lighting, definitely look better on PlayStation.
Right.
But I do think Laura looks nicer on the Saturn.
Yeah.
So we haven't mentioned the soundtrack yet. Nathan McCree composed it, and he did it in a very short frame of time. So yeah, all he had was just a very general idea of what the game might be about, but he did an amazing job. I love his work. He also scored Swagman, and I think that's a brilliant soundtrack. But Tomb Raider just it's got a very classical sound to it, and it just fits so well with the fact that Laura's environments are these ancient constructs. So, and also obviously the fact that it doesn't play at all times; it only just plays during certain sequences. It's just a really, really well done soundtrack. I really enjoy it.
It's classic. Yeah, it's just you hear the sounds that come out of that soundtrack, and you immediately think of Miss Croft perusing caves and trying to, find the damn cog. Like, it brings back that the moment you hear stuff like that.
Did we mention the FMV? That was also cutting edge. Like back then, pre-rendered 3D FMV cutscenes were kind of really cool back then. And it was a cutting edge thing. And that was also, as a kid, and I was actually, like Nick said, sitting next to somebody else playing the game, just kind of like popcorn, like, wow, this is amazing. Mm-hmm. And so that was a huge draw as well, is like the way they told the story through FMVs, because they were still in vogue at the time.
Yeah, and I mean, Lara ultimately became such a cultural icon. Mm-hmm. Like in Britain, she was actually featured in a couple of fashion magazines where she modeled, even though she was a computer graphics construct, and it wasn't, back then it was ultra realistic. Now we look at it and we understand that it really kind of isn't. There's a famous one where there's a CG image of her sort of swimming or whatever, and if you look at her, she's cross-eyed. But back then, you never even noticed that. Like, right. Silly little things like that. So, Lara became, she was a sex symbol, really, in a lot of, and like, I mean, there hadn't really been a female sort of lead in an adventure game like this, not to this extent.
No.
So yeah, really. I mean,
other than like Metroid and stuff, but even that was like a lesson.
Wait. Metroid was a girl?
Exactly.
Huh. Metroid's a girl?
It's like,
this is like, you're playing the game and it's like, oh, she's not in a suit. It's not a reveal at the end that she was a woman the whole time. It's like, no, Lara's a lady. Like, yeah.
Yes.
Weren't a lot of games that had that kind of a female role.
Yeah, and she's capable, she's, self-reliant, she's strong, she's, so she was, so the game was groundbreaking in a whole lot of ways, it seems.
And like you mentioned, she certainly was, I guess, to put it bluntly, a sex symbol, but that also wasn't her MO. Like you said, she had like a personality. She was a very self-motivated, brave and like strong person, perusing caves, climbing shit, not, getting murdered by bears and dinosaurs. So,
and I mean, honestly, her wardrobe was reasonable. I mean, she was in shorts and like a fully clothed top, if she's gonna be jumping around in caves and stuff, you wouldn't want to be wearing like heavy clothes. But she had like these side holstered guns that were pretty badass, I
was just talking about how Peru gets hot in the summer. It was snowing okay.
She was a strong female figure, I think, in games, and she could take care of herself. And you wouldn't want to ambush her because
she'll beat you up and take your lunch money.
Yeah, exactly.
And we can't even mention how, like, the fact that how she inspired so many other games. Like, of course, Uncharted is definitely the biggest one that stands out. For sure, and just the other 3D platformers in general. Because, I mean, without Tomb Raider, we wouldn't really have a lot of those, or at least the inspiration for why they became,
I mean, and we have to mention how many platforms it came out on, right? I mean, it came out on N-Gage of all platforms. It was like that popular that they had to get it on there, and yeah.
And of course, the new ones that are out right now by Square Enix. There's the two of. I think there's about two of them, right? There's Shadow the Tomb Raider, and there's
three. Maybe
there's a third one now.
I haven't played them. I wouldn't know, but I think there might be three. I'm not 100%.
I always thought there was only two because there's Shadow the Tomb Raider and Rise of the Tomb Raider. I could be wrong though.
Yeah. So the third one is just simply Tomb Raider.
Right.
Yeah,
that's confusing.
Yeah.
I thought the second one was pretty good. Maybe like Peter said, not as memorable as the first. The second one, you were like in the Venice waterways and stuff, and there was this scene at the beginning where you had to jump into this huge canyon. It was like this huge, vast crevasse or whatever, and I wonder if Saturn would have had a tough time with that. I don't really think that it was a technical issue that it didn't get published on Saturn, but that would have been an example where they would have used like a skybox or something like that, or they might have used VDP2. But yeah, so anyway, I was pretty impressed with number 2, but I didn't play number 3.
Understandable.
Yeah, I played through number 2 as well, all the way through, and I do own number 3, and I've kind of started it, but just the passion isn't there, or the time isn't there at the moment either. Yeah, it just 2 really took a lot of the passion out. I've sort of given it a go, but nothing too extreme. I actually haven't powered on a PlayStation in, oh god, I'm sure it's been years by now. And then number 4 did come out on Dreamcast, so I did give that a try, but again, not all the way through to the end. And I think it was around that time that the series changed relatively dramatically, because at some point it went from Core to Crystal Dynamics, and then from Crystal Dynamics, I think it then went to Square Enix, although I could even be missing developers in between there, because I sort of stopped following the series, to be honest.
It changed hands a few times. I don't know the lineage either, but yeah.
Core did indeed shut down.
Ben
So
knows.
I think the way it was because there's Core Crystal Dynamics, Nix's software, Ubisoft, was it Ubisoft Milan, Square Enix Montreal, and then Eidos Montreal.
It's important to note with all of the changes in the developers and who housed the Tomb Raider that there were actually 3 different series of it. You had 2 reboots and then the original version. And the naming convention can get super confusing if you're trying to figure out what's what. And so it's more or less the ones in the middle are the hardest ones to figure out where they take place. But the original ones, you got Tomb Raider 2, and then 3, and Last Revelation. And then the newest series with Eidos Montreal, I think is what it was, is the ones where you got the newest remake of Tomb Raider. You got Shadow of the Tomb Raider and Rise of the Tomb Raider.
Right.
And then you get real confusing when you talk about the Angelina Jolie movies. Like, how do they fit?
Oh, right.
Well, what about the ride as well?
Oh, exactly. The ride.
Where does that fit into the canon?
Is that in between games 2 and 3, or where in the chronology is the ride?
That's when Laura wanted just to go on a little vacation, go on a little amusement park.
Oh, right.
But no, it's just crazy. There's like three different canonical parts of it, or is it all canon?
Talking about the sequels is a good segue into the topic of Open Lara, which, for those who don't know, it is a reverse-engineered open-source Tomb Raider engine with which you can play the first 5 games on the computer. And, it looks pretty much exactly like the original game and plays like it. You can run it at like 144 frames per second if you want. You can do all sorts of settings to it to make it look better or worse. And a person or team of people, I don't know a ton about the project, but there is a project underway. You can look it up on YouTube and find videos of Open Lara Tomb Raider 1 running on the 3DO, which never got an official port of Tomb Raider. So they're basically porting Open Lara to the 3DO, and through that, they're making the first Tomb Raider game playable on it. So if someone, our homebrew scene in the Saturn community has been very ambitious lately. If someone were to port Open Lara to the Sega Saturn, that could mean that you would be able to bless the Saturn with the Tomb Raider sequels that its fans wanted but never got. Open Lara is making that an extreme possibility now. I certainly won't do it because I'm not a programmer, but it could be done.
It's been ported to the Dreamcast as well.
Yeah,
the first one. Yeah.
Do we want to talk about the competition? The competition thing where they entered that Laura Croft thing.
Oh, I can talk about it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
I'll bring that up. So,
a controversial.
Sega Extreme user by the name of Ross entered not Open Lara into the competition, but a hack, a hackety doodle do, as he called it, after being pressed for a description. It basically had one level. It was, I think it was Lost Valley. It's whichever one where you first encounter the T-Rex. It was, and it had some texture swaps, a wider screen. Like Laura has like different clothes. They're more torn up. She's like bleeding, and like some of the wolves and other enemies have slightly different textures. The T-Rexes look darker and more scary, and there's more enemies. And there's 2 T-Rexes in the level. There's a better skybox. There's all this neat stuff. You know, I got to hand it to Ross. They did a wonderful job with this hack. Unfortunately, they got disqualified from the competition because when it was first submitted, it was not in the form of a patch. It was just a full download, which Sega Extreme cannot host copyrighted content, particularly for the contest, because that puts them at risk of getting nabbed for piracy. And the other issue is that you know, Ross never gave a description for what it was they submitted. And when we asked Ross what it was, Ross got very defensive and mad and didn't tell us. And it was just like, okay, dude. But anyhow, so they got disqualified, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But if Ross is planning to finish that hack, it's not a port of Open Lara or anything, but you know, it's a neat modification of the original game, and playing the full game with that would be kind of neat.
They put the handstand back in there too, which
handstand
was
in,
missing from the UK version. Was it missing from the North American version? I can't remember because they
It
fixed a
was,
bunch of stuff. Okay, all right, yeah. So they put the handstand move in there, which the PlayStation version had. I grew up doing the handstand one because I had the PlayStation version, but that's cool.
Yeah, but it makes you wonder. Wasn't there like rumors that it was like thoughts that it was like an unreleased beta of that?
That was never confirmed, and I don't think it was. I don't think that was an unreleased beta.
But it was so vague. Yeah, that's the thing is we didn't know what we were judging based on. We're like, what are we supposed to be judging this as? What is this? You know, and there was no attempt to try to clarify that. If anything, they just wanted to be like, you figure it out. You know, well,
right?
no.
Ross is being kind of a weirdo about it.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, well, you're not helping us, so sorry.
But yeah, coming at the same time as Open Lara news, it kind of made it a little confusing. We were like, wait a second, okay, what is this? You know, so
yeah, because
anyway.
if it was Open Lara, that'd be like big deal.
Rad.
Like, sweet.
Yeah,
you know, but if someone's out there wanting to port Open Lara to the Saturn, a fan base of nerds will give you a very warm welcome.
I mean, the Dreamcast has what, an SH4 in it for the CPU,
Well,
and the
SH4
Saturn's got
million.
2 SH2s, and you add that up, that's SH4, right?
Do the math. We're
Brilliant.
Jaguar now.
Straight
We're
port,
Jaguar
right?
now, folks.
Straight port.
That's right.
But is there anything else you want to talk about Laura and her wonderful adventures in the tombs that she raids before we head over to the obscure game of the cast?
I just have one question to the group. Has anybody here tried the Nude Raider code?
It's fake.
Totally, yeah. I kind
It's
of
fake,
blew
right?
up.
I
No,
thought it was
it's
fake.
legit.
Yeah,
It's
the nude
legit.
code was
Really?
like,
You blow up.
so that was like the Ark of the
Is-
Covenant.
is
Like
it real?
people looked for that code or the Holy Grail, you know. And I don't think anybody
There
ever
was a
found.
long period of time where everyone thought that was a real
Well,
thing.
didn't somebody make it? Didn't somebody
Yeah,
like
it was a
basically
mod.
hack the game and make it
Oh,
There's a
happen?
PC
Yeah,
mod
yeah,
for
I'm
it,
sure many
but
people
I
have
mean,
done
it
that.
got taken down, but it's still online. You know the internet; nothing ever disappears from the internet.
I don't know, Peter. Did you figure it out?
Is that why you had to go to the
No.
bathroom so much playing it?
Yeah.
I never did find the Nude Raider. I mean, yes, of course, it was a fake. There was a magazine, I don't know if it was April Fool's or whatever, but they ran a story that you had to like input some complicated sequence that literally took 30 minutes to do or whatever.
Well, I mean, okay, so you guys mentioned Samus, right? You did mention Metroid, Samus, and I think that was kind of like the genesis for that. So when people saw Samus's clothes come off or her suit come off at the end of the game, that like made a bunch of prepubescent boys go like, "This is a thing. This can happen in games." What other games? So it was like exactly. So then there's like this search for the nude code.
And it's still rumored. There was actually a joke about it. Like I think it was actually Eidos like put the code a code in. And he put it up. Laura would just explode. And
oh
the
yeah,
game would
they
be
did
over.
in magazines. They did. There were like trolling back then. Like trying to like tease you into thinking that you got the real thing, and then
Guys, did I cut out? Because like I actually just talked about how I got the Saturn Nude Raider code working. Did I cut out there? I was going to totally reveal that to the world. It was. I don't know what
I guess we'll
happened.
never know.
There you go, guys.
Technology.
Sorry, guys.
What's
You have it
happening?
here.
Well,
You have the answer.
There
If
go,
you happen to
Peter
hear
has
it.
Yeah,
Wow.
if you somehow managed to hear it when it didn't cut out, then
Yeah.
congrats, you got the code. Unfortunately, it'll have to stay in the vault. He has a contract that he can only explain it every 20 years.
Yeah.
So hopefully,
yeah, that's too bad.
in the next
Too
20
bad.
years, we'll figure it out.
There's another game where they actually had to cover up the top of a female because it was an alien species who, had female top end and everything. And so they finally had to cover that up. If you guys remember Giant Citizen Kabuto.
Oh, yes.
I don't think I know that one.
Not as popular of a game.
No, not quite. And there was the actual original version of the game had one of the characters was this female that you run around with. The original version you were topless, and they had to end up patching that to where she had a top on.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning before we leave this that Eidos, after around Tomb Raider 2, they were getting really big and they acquired Core. They acquired Crystal Dynamics, as you guys mentioned, and we're trying to become like this super publishing house, And they had another franchise called Pandemonium. Not Pandemonium, but Pandemonium, and that also got an N-Gage release. And I think they really that was a Crystal Dynamics property that was kind of acquired by Eidos, and they really tried to push that and have like a sequel and have it be like as big as Tomb Raider. And there was a lot of hype around that game, but not nearly as much. It was a 2.5D thing, and it just wasn't nearly as groundbreaking as Tomb Raider was. But again, they tried to do kind of the same thing. That's my impression from back in the day, like hanging out at game shops and stuff like that, is that Eidos was really trying to push that, Was it not Eidos, or was it just straight up Crystal Dynamics?
It could have been both.
Because they acquired Crystal Dynamics, did they not? Or am I just talking out of my ass?
I have no idea.
Eidos did acquire Crystal Dynamics, you're right.
Okay.
But I think Pandemonium was released under
Crystal Dynamics
label. Yeah.
Okay.
I think you're right.
Okay. Well then, maybe, like I say, I might just be talking out of my ass. But I back in the day as a kid was a little confused about the whole developer-publisher relationship and all the middlemen and middleware and stuff like that. So it got kind of confusing during all those acquisitions and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so
that's understandable though.
Yeah.
All right, guys, for our obscure game of the cast, this is going to be an obscure one, and it kind of has something to do with Tomb Raider. We are covering Lupin III, Pyramid no Kenja, or the Sage of Pyramid, or the Sage in the Pyramid, whatever you want to. It's the subtitle on the menu is called the Sage of Pyramid. Doesn't seem quite right, but that's how I'm going to call it. It was published by Asmik and developed by Vantan International, who the only other credit they have is a Death Mask on the Saturn. Weirdly enough, I did not know that was a thing, but apparently it was a thing. It was released on August 6, 1998, so a very late release title on the Saturn, and obviously, for two reasons, didn't come out in America. Go figure. The game is based off of the famous Lupin III manga/anime series in Japan, which follows Arsene Lupin's great-grandson, Lupin III, an international thief whose friends Jigen, a quick-shot marksman, and Gomon, an expert swordsman who can cut through steel, break in and steal precious jewels and gold all over the world. And are you guys familiar with Lupin III at all?
No.
Wow.
Yeah,
Sorry.
It's a third-person perspective, like, action game, right?
Yeah, well no, it's a. I'm in the series,
Lupin
the anime.
III.
Lupin
Okay,
III.
right, yeah. No,
Yeah,
not that much.
So essentially, it's a really old anime series from the 70s by Monkey Punch. It was the anime is actually done by Team S Entertainment, who actually does my all-time famous anime, Detective Conan, and they actually did have crossovers with Lupin III and Detective Conan, which are quite good. But I'm also biased because I love both series a lot. The game basically is a third-person action-adventure game, sort of like Tomb Raider in aspects, but it's more arcadey feeling. So like I said, I wish I could tell you more about the story, but there's literally nothing online about it, and I do not speak Japanese. So essentially, what I could gather from what I saw is Lupin sees a news report about this pyramid with all its treasures, and tries his hand at stealing what's inside because he's Lupin the Third. That's what he does. He's an international thief. As he enters the pyramid, he's chased down by his longtime rival, Inspector Zenigata, which it's another gimmick of the show where every episode he's chased down by Inspector Zenigata, which is his arch nemesis who tries to take him in from Interpol. So as he's chased in the pyramid, Lupin and his friends basically go into the pyramid and forced in there and has to go through each level of the pyramid while they steal treasure and try to escape the pyramid along the way. And really, why did I pick this as a featurette for an obscure game for the game? Because it has several elements of Tomb Raider, such as 3D platforming and, of course, recovering expensive artifacts throughout the game. Did you guys get a chance to try this out at all?
I didn't get a chance to try it out, but just kind of throughout the cast, I was watching some gameplay of it, and it made me really want to try it out. I think the guy looks really goofy running around, and it does look like a Tomb Raider game because you're going through an ancient pyramid in a tomb, trying to get ancient treasure, and he's like climbing shit and stuff like that. It's very goofy looking, and I do really want to play it now, having seen some of it. I just didn't have the time before.
It's understandable.
So.
But yeah, that's sort of his MO. Is it's really a goofy comedy series in ways. There is things that it takes seriously, and actually, fun fact. Well, actually, Nick, you say it.
Fun fact.
It's actually technically the first Studio Ghibli movie.
Was it really?
Because
really?
Hayao Miyazaki and several of the people that work in Ghibli or now and past started on TMS Entertainment's Lupin the Third: Castle Cagliostro, which is directed by Hayao Miyazaki, which technically makes it the first Ghibli movie, unofficial Ghibli movie. The same way what's the other one? Not Laputa. Is it not Laputa? It's Nausicaa is also technically a Ghibli movie and is always classified that way. But actually, Nausicaa is more classified as a Ghibli movie than Lupin is, because Lupin's owned by TMS Entertainment, which is a completely different company, so it's harder to get the rights to that than Nausicaa. So a lot of Ghibli collections will keep it out of it, but technically it's roughly the first Ghibli movie, and it is actually on 4K Blu-ray right now that you could actually watch it, and man, it looks fantastic. If you guys haven't watched any Lupin stuff, highly recommend checking out Castle Cagliostro. Amazing Lupin movie in 4K. I mean, it just blew my mind. But yeah, it's a really fun game. I really enjoyed it. It has some rough spots and control lag like Tomb Raider did, and as it came out later, it definitely was Tomb Raider inspired in aspects, but it still keeps the funny gags and the funny sort of the funniness and the spirit of the Lupin anime and manga, which I really enjoyed.
I think it's kind of neat that, if you were in Japan and you were a Lupin fan at the time, like that anime was pretty old, even by like, late 90s standards. It was like, 15, 18 years old. And then all of a sudden this video game about it comes out. That'd be like trying to think modern day equivalent. Like if we just, they don't reboot Jimmy Neutron, but we just randomly get a really good Jimmy Neutron game that comes out without any sort of reboot at all. It'd be kind of like that level of a gap between cartoon and video game, I guess. So
it'd be more equivalent.
I
think more of an equivalent would be probably like something like a Flintstones game.
Oh yeah,
because Lupin is like the equivalent, like Lupin. I think the big ones are Lupin, Astro Boy. I think Hajime no Ippo's pretty big there. Dragon Ball, and other in the big boy leagues in Japan. Like
I just meant like the span of time, like it was 15 or so years between them.
Yeah, I guess for that example, yeah.
But no, Jimmy Neutron was certainly not from the Lupin era.
Definitely not. Oh no, I wasn't saying it was. I meant just like the notoriety of it,
right,
like the fame of it.
It was it was like that level of popular back then.
Exactly, and it still is to this day. Like Lupin it's like one of the biggest anime of all time. It's pretty famous. It's not as famous in the United States, sadly, but it still has its audience, and it still regularly comes out. Like they released a Lupin movie like last year, and it was really, really good. It was like a 3D animated thing, like the guys that do the Minions. But man, was it so good. Like, my roommate watched it with me. He's like, dang, I want to watch Lupin now. It's awesome.
Pat, would you like say this is a game that English speakers who don't understand Japanese, or not just English speakers, but just, is this a game that people who don't understand Japanese could play and beat and like have an easy time understanding what they're supposed to do?
Yeah, I did. I had no idea. The thing is that I think you need the context of who Lupin is to get it, because you'll see these cutscenes of these Japanese characters and not have any context. But because I'm a fan of the series, I'm like, okay, Lupin's like convincing his buddies to do it, and they're hesitant. Oh yeah, Inspector Zenigata's chasing them down. Like these characters will pop up. Like, I don't know what's going on. Who are these characters? Who is these people? And they just won't know. So I think it's actually a game I would recommend that you at least look up a digest version of Lupin the Third and understand at least those characters before you watch it, because there's a lot of Lupin stories and a lot of them that exist that you don't need to know a whole context of Lupin to watch.
So it sounds like Lupin fans who own a Saturn or are Saturn fans probably should play this game.
Absolutely, it's a ton of fun. It's a lot of fun, a lot of really gag-oriented stuff, and highly recommend watching it. I definitely think if you're a Lupin fan, especially if you're Lupin the Part 2 fan, I think you'd really enjoy it, because it keeps that spirit of that anime in it. Because it takes place, I believe, it's supposed to be a Lupin the Third Part 2 based anime, but you can really shove it in anywhere. It's really good. But yeah, did any of you other guys give it a shot?
I was in the same boat where I didn't get a chance to play it. I looked up some videos and some reviews and feedback on it. It, like Nick said, it looked like something I'd really get into, because it looks very goofy. It looks very, Tomb Raider-esque, and it does look like a lot of fun. And so I think I will definitely be giving it a try.
I had a bit of an interesting experience. I wanted to play this so I could be ready to talk about it for the cast, and I think I played the wrong game. So I played a game called Lupin the Third Chronicles on the Saturn. So as I'm kind of going through it, I was like, wait, is this even the right game? And I mean, it is a Lupin game, yeah, but I don't think it's the same game that everybody else has played or talked about. So there are multiple Lupin games on the Saturn. Because there is... You know what, I'm just going to look it up real quick, but I'm positive the Saturn has multiple Lupin games.
There's about 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, and so I'm pretty sure I played the wrong one. I mean, so the one I played had really nice presentation, and it looked great, and it looked like a gag of fun. But I, don't want to say any more than that, because I don't, it's not the same game that everybody else played. So I've out-obscured myself with this one, I think.
We'll say that for another cast. But I guess overall I really enjoyed it. I really recommend people play it if they haven't. And yeah, I don't think it's that expensive online. It's not really a game that because Lupin fans aren't like the biggest in North America. It's a pretty important anime, but it's not as big. But yeah, I'm looking like I guess if you want to buy it now, $40 for it, which is kind of high. I'm surprised it's that high. I guess with Saturn, maybe that's to be expected. $3 buy it now, but that's $17 shipping. Yeah, I'm just gonna see how much it was selling for, because you could probably get off of Amazon Japan for cheaper in a giant bundle. Yeah, I'm seeing 40. A bid went to $15. A $3 bid. So yeah, it's around that area, $20. So it's fairly affordable and it's fairly playable. So I definitely would recommend, if you haven't played it and you want to play it, definitely pick it up. Alright guys, thank you for watching. Before we go, we want to shout out our $10 and up patrons. So Emerald Nova, Johannes Fetz, Blue Moon 95, Derek A-Team, Momphis, Tanuki Trev, and of course Young Money Sawee. If you guys want to get shout out on the podcast and the SHIRO show, you can donate. You can give us if you back us $10 and up on Patreon, it will allow us to shout you on the show, and if you actually had VIP status, you can actually be on the show quarterly if you'd like. If you guys don't really want to back us on Patreon, which I mean you can if you want. We have a lot of good things on there. Like if you don't want to back us at the $10 up level, you can back us at the $3 up level and get exclusive exclusive Discord access and titles. You can get early videos from not only SHIRO but Pandemonium reviews, and of course all the other content that we do outside of SHIRO. I know that if I start doing content, I will make all my videos available first as well. And of course, like I said, early podcasts, early episodes. And then I also got the $20 up, and if you do $20 up, you get a discount code for shirts. So if you want to buy the shirts at cost, you can back us at the $20 level. I keep forgetting about that perk. But speaking of shirts, if you guys want to support us financially but don't want to back us on Patreon, you can also check us out on Threadless, which is on our website, SEGA Saturn SHIRO Threadless, and we have some awesome shirts. Dave actually just uploaded a new shirt design, which is the fist holding the controller. Can't see it. I don't know why I'm doing it on camera. We're all on camera, but you can't see us. And there's some really nice shirt designs on there. And if you can't back us financially, definitely share us out. Give us a rating on our podcast page. Give us a rating on Facebook. Like, subscribe, comment, ring the bell, etc. to notify us when we're going live, and comment and let us know. And actually, let us know what you guys think are our thoughts on Tomb Raider and the content in the comments. Did we do it justice? Did we talk about it good? Did we not talk about it good? Did I say inflammatory things that I should be punished for?
Yes.
Etc. Okay.
Yes.
And remember, you must
take off these wet clothes.
You
Dreamcast.
cutting out again, Peter.
Fucking Canadian internet. I swear to Jesus.
You pay a
Well,
lot
that's
for
what
it
happens when
too.
you have Moose running the Lions.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like I want Dave to tie my ribbon. He's obviously really into it. He's doing a great job. You know? Yeah. Ugh.